So we have the getOrder statistic controller that receives these 4 parameters, and we have the showOrders controller that is using it and sends all of these 4 parameters. But what if we don't care about these 2 values and we don't want to send them as parameters? If we try to delete them, Visual Studio will give us an error that we are not sending enough parameters. We can see here the highlight under the run and saying, there is no argument given that corresponds to the required formatter. Blah, 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 blah. We can see that it states that the method is supposed to get 4 parameters, but we're only sending 1. If we'll build it, we'll get to see the same one over here. Okay? We can see that it has a run method that gets number column, number column, number column, whereas we are only sending to it 1 parameter. So how can we make any of these parameters optional instead of mandatory? Well, to make a parameter optional, we can say here equals to null. By saying equals to null to these 2 parameters, we are making them optional. And now our code will be okay and will compile without an error. Now, of course, we need to take care of that scenario. So we need to say here, if quantity is not null, then update quantity. And if total amount is not null, then total amount. Perfect. Let's run this and see that it works and review the changes that we've done to the code. So we can see that it's only updating the items because that's the only thing we've sent to it. And if we look at the parameter specification here, when we are calling it, we see that 1 parameter is mandatory and 2 parameters are optional with the square brackets and the equals to null. And in the getOrder statistics, all we had to do to make these parameters optional is simply, let's have a look. We've added the equal null to the parameters that we want to have optional, and if we handle the null situation as we do over here. Now, if you want to just skip an optional parameter, we can simply say null and then send the last parameter, in this case total amount. And that would skip that parameter and work great. Yes, we've got the invalid here because we entered the rows that we didn't want to enter. Perfect. And great. I said the total quantity. If I send total amount, we'll get the actual behaviors that we wanted. Great. So again, to recap, an optional parameter is signified by equals to null, and we can either not send it or send null there to get the value. In the context of the migrated application, we analyze the code to understand the different interactions, and we figure out which parameters are mandatory, which means are always sent to this program, and which are optional, and mark the parameters accordingly.